Hello there, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus for round 1, 2022. We're a podcast, but we're a vodcast as well, Gus. We're taking the world by storm.
I've only just learnt what a podcast is, so vodcast has got me very... Does that mean they can see us?
That means they can see us.
All right, well,
hello everyone. You can listen to us on your podcast feed, or if you want to have a look at our rude heads, you can go to YouTube and you can watch us. Just over 24 hours until the season kicks off. What a great start to the year. Panthers and Manly.
Yeah, terrific. It's been a long off-season, and I think that's going to be to the benefit of a lot of teams, although there was a period there through Christmas and January where a lot of players and a lot of coaches and a lot of staff were affected by COVID. There was an interruption there, but everyone's got through the trials and really looking forward to the start of the competition this week.
We said this last week. I just want to reiterate too, the floods around, particularly northern New South Wales, to see Lismore and Ballina. And then the rain came again yesterday through parts of Sydney. It's just devastating. I just want to send our best to everyone. I mean, there's people have lost their homes and businesses. So we're here waxing lyrical about how exciting it is to start the footy season while people's lives have been upended. I just want to send our very best to anyone listening in that situation. It's frightening, isn't it? It's absolutely frightening.
It is. I've actually been in a lot of those areas in the last 12 months. I mean, the Warriors played a trial in Lismore in January last year, so I'd spent some time up there, and I've driven to Queensland 3 times during the off-season up and back, and the roads up there now are terrific, but every now and then we go over a river and there'd be this almighty high bridge, and I can remember saying to my wife, I'd say, why is this bridge so high? Why have they gone to the trouble to build it this high? It must have cost a fortune. Then I see pictures on where there's only the very top of it still left, and I'm thinking, my God, the amount of water that they've had up there and what it's done to people's properties and lives, it's incredible, but it's part of living in this country, isn't it? It's fires, it's droughts, it's floods. They find a way. It's amazing because every time someone is interviewed, someone who's lost everything, they just say, well, we'll start again. Yeah. And that's the Australian spirit.
Well, sport's a good distraction for a lot of people, so let's talk positively. Some of the fields this weekend. Look, the technology now with drainage and stuff. For instance, if it doesn't rain between now and tomorrow night at Penrith, that ground will be cherry ripe. But you'd have played on some dead set mud heaps in your time.
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, it's amazing how people compare eras and look back on the past, and they tend to do with rose-coloured glasses. But the fields that we played back on in the 70s, and I'd imagine it was even worse in eras before those, in the 70s and 80s, by March or April, there was no grass on them. They were just dirt. And we only played in daytime, so there was, but if it rained, they were mud heaps, absolute mud heaps. You would play on a ground, honestly, I say this, you would tread in the mud and it would suck your boot off. You'd have to go back and get your boot out of the mud because if you'd have fields that were like that. I can remember we played at the cricket ground one day. That those famous pictures of Norm Provan coming off after the grand final and our trophy. But I played there one day where the centre pitch, the cricket ground pit, had been raining for a long time, and it was like that. It was in those conditions, and the fields today are remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I was telling the story on the weekend because we were down there at Wollongong with the NRLW. Wollongong, that Wynn Stadium down there, used to be Wollongong Showground, and it used to be a greyhound racing track.
Did it really?
And it had a football field in the middle of it. Huh. And that's where the first grade played. When Illawarra first came into the competition, our games were played out in the middle of the greyhound track. So you'd have to cross the greyhound track to get out to the middle of the field. And, of course, it was down a little bit from the greyhound track. And the idea was that the water would wash off the greyhound track so that they could do their greyhounds, but it would fill up in the middle of the field.
Swimming pool.
And Wollongong, every time I've ever been to Wollongong, it's rained. Yeah. I mean, no offence to the Wollongong area, but it's just how life's been. So we played there one day with the Bulldogs. I think it was 1988 or 89 or something or other, and the field was water. You couldn't see the sidelines. You couldn't see the try lines. You had these posts sticking up at either end, and that was the only way we could get our bearings and all that sort of thing. And I was sitting on the sideline. The player said, if we're going to play in it, you've got to sit on the sideline. So I had to sit on the sideline without an umbrella in all this teeming rain. And no one was going to score a try. We're playing with leather footballs.
Oh, that'd be like a brick.
No one was going to score a try. And I say it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen on a football field, because Terry Lamb, the great Terry Lamb, put up this kick, towards their try line, and it just came down, and sort of the winger and the fullback were running towards it, and it didn't bounce. It just went plop and went into the water. And so they sort of had to stop and go back to get it. And with that, there was this giant wave coming down the field, and they sort of looked, and what had happened was Terry Lamb had dived from 10 metres away, slid in like a bowling ball, knocked them over, and when he came up, he'd slid into the in goal and he'd scored the try. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen on a football field. But there was this shower of water, and they couldn't see anything because this water was coming towards them, and Terry had slid along the ground, scooped up the ball, put it down. No bunker. We don't know.
Imagine the bunker. Oh, the bunker would have been.
I think it would have been 88 or 89. It was one of those 2 years. Went down there, and it might have been the only try we scored in the game.
I don't want to talk about COVID for too long, but it will play a part in the season. What protocols are in place? What are clubs doing? Are you testing each week? If someone comes up positive, what happens, etc.?
Yep. So we'll go back to last year where everyone was in lockdown and in bubbles, and we had to transfer everyone up to Queensland to keep the competition going. There were very strict regulations around the teams at that time, and we just know that life can't go on like that, And I think with vaccinations and boosters and everyone getting back into society and realising we just have to live with this thing. It's really come down to a common sense approach. We do have protocols that have been put upon us in teams. So they've made this announcement now that you have to name 24 players for each team and take 24 players into camp with you if you travel or on game day and those types of things, which is going to cause an issue for lower tier football and the amount of football that players get. And they understand that, and we're working with them on that particular subject.
So if you name 24, can any of those players drop back and play cup football?
Well, if you played your NRL game on the Saturday, they could certainly play on the Sunday.
But not before.
No, technically, that really hasn't been determined. So, for instance, this weekend, and I don't know yet whether or not what the legal say about it, but Bulldogs are travelling to Townsville. All right, so we would have to take normally 24 players up to Townsville in case someone got sick. We'd have to make sure we've got enough players to fill in for the whole thing, which means... technically you may have six or seven players that don't get a game that weekend. All right, and if that goes on for a couple of weeks and we haven't played for a couple of weeks after trials, they're not getting any football, nor is it helping the second tier football because you've got a New South Wales Cup team and you've got an under-21s team and et cetera, and it's caused a bit of... See, South Sydney play Thursday night back in Penrith.
Oh,
right? Our reserve grade plays against South Sydney on Saturday. So South Sydney's NRL players can drop back and play in the New South Wales Cup game on Saturday, but technically, if the Bulldogs took all 24 to Townsville, those players wouldn't play in that game, which will make that game extremely lopsided. So what we've done is we're going to take 24, but we're going to take 18 up on Friday to get ready for the NRL game, and then when the New South Wales Cup game is over on Saturday, we'll grab 6 players and put them on a plane and take them to Townsville so that we've got 24 up there, so at least they get a game of football. Now, I'm not sure under the current rules whether even that's right. We're allowed to do that, but that's what we've been trying to negotiate this week, and they haven't really come back to us on a decision. So we've just taken the decision. That's what we're going to do. We spoke to New South Wales Rugby League about perhaps moving some of the second tier games to Monday nights to make it easier, which would help that competition and help players get football. Understanding that we haven't had any lower grade football for 2 years. We've had no development football, no junior rep football, no second tier football, which is, it hurts the development of players. It hurts the depth in the competition. We saw it last year. We would have, players that probably hadn't played for 4 or 5 weeks suddenly thrust into first grade on that day. And if you got 3 or 4 of them and you ran into a Penrith or a Melbourne or a Roosters that were on their day, that's where we're getting these uneven games and blowout scorelines. And we can't do that. And we've got to keep producing NRL talent. They've got to be playing football in the lower tiers. So simply corralling away 24 players each weekend and 8 of them not getting a game, it's just not going to get it done. We need to be more flexible than that. We come to training every morning. Everyone who walks inside the players' area and the gym area, it's separate from our administration. They get a RAT test every morning. If everyone's negative, it's fine. If anyone's positive, they go down and get a PCR. They go home. They isolate. I think the standard is that they get 7 days isolation. They then have to get a negative PCR test. They then have to undergo, or we make our players undergo a stress test and a blood test and a heart test, all right, because we have had a couple that have come back and despite the fact they're still negative from COVID, there are some heart palpitation issues and heart rate issues that eventuate some breathing difficulties.
Wow.
The vast majority of our people, staff and players who've had COVID during the off-season didn't even know they had it, got no symptoms whatsoever. Some had mild symptoms. If you have serious symptoms, then your protocols to come back to play are much different. But everyone goes through that initial phase of testing. And we had a couple of players who, whilst they'd been negative for a few weeks, as soon as we'd get them through to exercise, their pulse would get to 190 very, very quickly.
Wow.
So we had to go back and reassess that. So we were learning on the run about how to bring players back into training and out of protocol issues. The vast majority of them, though, they do their 7 days. They even train on their own while they're away because they've got no symptoms. But they've got to get a negative test, and then they've got to come back and as standard procedure, which I think is really important. We get them that blood test and we get them that stress test, and then we allow them to roll back into training. So potentially during the season, if you had a player that was positive to COVID and he had some symptoms, he could miss 2 or 3 weeks of football. Others will be ready to go in 7 or 8 days as long as they can pass those tests and get back into it.
So what about the broader squad? What they've all been training together. What happens with that? What happens in that situation?
Well, that's our squad. They all do that. They all, everyone.
Sorry, I mean, if you turn up and you're positive, and I've been training next to you.
Well, you were negative yesterday.
Yep. Okay.
Right. So
we're not close. The close contact situations change.
So potentially you're never positive while you're in the building. All right, so we've had players test positive, but they tested negative yesterday.
Yeah,
well, that's all we can do. We can only test them and see that they're negative, and it's and for me, who I might be in and out of the building 3 times during the day. So technically, I've got to have a test every time I come back inside because I've been out again. But I don't know that I would have symptoms that early anyway. I haven't had it. No one in my household has had it. No one in my household has had it, so I haven't had it yet. But just about everyone else at the Bulldogs has had it, and I think in most other clubs I had CEOs and football managers from other clubs ringing me saying, "Crikey, we've got 28 blokes." I said, "Yeah, so have we." So it was pretty similar right across the board. There was one week during the off season where the Bulldogs only had about 8 blokes that could train. And it was about the second week of January because that was very intense, where everyone went home for Christmas and New Year. That's where everything spiked, everywhere. And despite our best efforts, we'd actually sent them home early for Christmas, fearing that this might happen. And I didn't want it to interrupt their Christmas and their chance to get home and see their families. But by the time we come back after January, the vast majority of them had it, and virtually every day they'd come in and test, and someone would have it, and we'd have to send them home. So I got them all, and I said, "Look, we need to be COVID-free in 10 days. You all need to isolate." So everyone isolated. And that allowed us to go to a camp at Tamworth. And we went out there for 7 days, 8 days, which was brilliant for the whole club and for the team. And it got them back into the training and got them back into the off-season. Otherwise, it would have been constantly interrupted. And since then, we've only had the odd case. Matt Burton missed the first trial because he had COVID, but he trained every day. Our trainer went out and trained him every day on his own. So he just played in the second trial. But I don't think we've had a positive case for a while now. A couple of the staff got it. But now we get into travellings, planes, trains and automobiles. You go to airports, you go to get on planes, anything could happen. You're staying in motels, you're travelling around the country. Someone's going to get it. Someone's going to get it on game day. And then you've got to go through the protocols of getting them replaced and getting them isolated and going off that again. But it's going to have to be something we live with. What's the solution? So
it's going to be a factor. We get to a big game at the end of the year, assuming
Don't ask the question, Matt.
Well, I mean,
don't ask the question.
You might get to grand final day and Nathan Cleary's got COVID.
Do you think they're going to tell anyone?
Well, I'm sick of the bloody thing.
Well, I'm asking the question.
I don't know.
On the morning of the grand final, if your number one player tests positive to COVID, are you going to tell anyone? Are you going to leave him out? What's I'll do a Jerry Seinfeld here. What's the protocol? What do you do?
Well, it's the same with HIA.
What do you do?
Yeah. Well, Gal said the other day, towards the end of the year, you clubs might find yourselves in a situation where you're in the finals, or you're getting to big games where you might have to all go into a bubble to avoid it. Might that happen?
I think that would be a precaution you'd have to consider, yes. You know, and God knows what's happening with COVID. You know, I don't know what it's going to look like in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 5 years' time. I've got no idea. No one knows. We don't know what other strains are coming. This might be the start of something. I don't know.
Please.
It might be the end of something. I don't know. No one knows. But whatever it is, we're going to have to learn to live with it. But every precaution, you know, we went to the expense, and I'm sure every other club did the same. You know, we've had sanitisers put on every wall, on every doorway, on every doorknob, all around the building. You know, go to the expense, and they're filled up every day. And we make sure that everyone's washing their hands and cleaning their area. And if you lift up a weight, you've got to clean it. If when you pack your gear away, you've got to clean it. We've put in new industrial washing machines and dryers and all that sort of thing to give them fresh towels and do all this sort of thing every day. You know, they're all being submitted now. So we've gone through a great expense to make everything as hygienic and everything as possible. The players are constantly warned about it. They've got a responsibility to keep themselves healthy and fit, not just for them, from their families, but for their teammates as well. Everyone understands how difficult it is. You know, at times there is a sense of you know, people have become a little bit blasé about it, or you know, but you've got to keep them on point. You've got to make sure you keep reminding them that it only takes one little slip up and suddenly two or three, and even to how you room players when you go away. So if we go away, there's no way that we'd put two playmakers in one room in case one of them got it, because then the other one's gone too.
How do you think of all this stuff?
So there are certain positions or certain people that we'll have to isolate in single rooms, which is a greater cost, you know, to what you're doing. So if we go away for 2 days, there's no way that we can put two players in similar positions or in joint rooms.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're looking for two replacements in the one position and not one.
How have you come up with all this? Look, how have you sat down and thought through every scenario? Is there a war cabinet that does this, or how do you think of it all?
We have people in our club that sit down. We have plenty of meetings. We don't just sit around on our hands all day drinking lattes. I mean, it's just. But we got some really clever people in these football organisations that have been dealing with issues and they come up with it. And the NRL send out advice and all that sort of thing, and medical advice all the time, and we deal with it. You know, some of the things that they send out we disagree with and we question, but we try to implement as much as possible. And we're trying to get everyone a game of football. We're trying to keep everyone healthy, and we've got to contend with what happens during the year. God knows what happens this in Origin camp. If someone, what they're going to have, you know, what are they going? How isolated they're going to keep them. I don't know what's going to happen with COVID. Nor do you, nor does anyone else.
No. Whew. What a good stuff.
You know, it's.
So at least we got a comp, and at least teams are playing at home, and fans can come to games.
100%. So we've got to continue with that. We've got to push through with that.
Yeah.
We've just got to deal with the COVID part of it.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to get back to where we were in the last 2 years, where players were living in a bubble, or we had to move the competition to another state, or whatever it is. And I'm sure Peter V'landys will do that to keep the game alive if that's what's required. And if that's what's required, we'll all have to do it. But we have to push through it, and we have to get players playing. We have to get the development kids playing. We've got to produce the NRL players of the future. We've got to have plenty of depth in our squads to cover for these types of things. And that's around the other injuries that you have. You know, we're going to have other injuries too that have got to be looked after, and remembering too that to come out of any kids that come out of the top 30 situation, you know, could be potentially getting COVID in their environment, which is not as strict as our environment. So we've got to be addressing their hygiene as well. Coaches that are across both groups, and you know, academy programs and functions and you know, all sorts of things.
I saw your launch the other day. The players were separate from the punters, weren't they?
Well, yes, that wasn't ideal, but that's what happened. And you know, the launch is a big thing for every club because they sell it in sponsorship packages, and people love their team and they want to come along and see the new players and spend a night together. And you know, the Bulldogs generally do these things in a very glamorous way, and they did. They had it at Dalton House down at Piedmont the other night. And
so you looked dapper.
It was there. The gear was terrific from Lever Zabara, and dressed the boys out in their suits, and they looked really nice. But they sat out in a separate room on the side in their suits, had a meal together, went in through a back door, stood on the stage, hello, cheers, my name's so-and-so, out the back door onto a bus and home. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's affected everyone. It was the same. I sat with them. I came in, did a 5-minute little bit on the stage. James Bracey hosted it for us. And then went home. So we didn't get to talk to anyone. We didn't get to talk to anyone that was up there. But that's part of the protection of the players and everyone else around and the protocol of it. So when I leave here today and I go across to Belmore, I'll have to go across, I'll have to get rat tested, I'll sit in my car in the car park. Everyone comes in, we rat test them in the car park, they sit in their car until we ring them and say you're negative, and then off we go.
Did you get a suit?
Eh?
Did you get a bag of fruit?
No, I don't dress like the players. I've got suits. I don't.
Got any spares lying around? They're pretty good.
Nothing that'll fit you, mate.
Hey, this year on the podcast, I want to go through all the games every week and get Gus's thoughts on them. There's some issues relating to various clubs. We'll do it during the preview of all the games. So it's not just Canterbury related, but you'll understand it's round one, and it's been a big rebuild at the club. So I just want to get some general thoughts from Gus for all the Bulldogs fans out there, because I suppose they're probably pretty keen to hear how things are going. You've got an unshakable faith in Trent Barrett as a first-grade coach. Why?
Because he's a good coach. He's a good coach.
But there's more to it than that.
I've known Trent for a long time. I mean, I coached against Trent, and I knew him as a teenage player. I can remember we played against him one night at Sydney Football Stadium, and he was very young, and he might have only been into his, I don't know, I don't think he played many games, but he played against Brad Fittler, and Brad gave him a pretty tough night. And when we'd finished showering up, I grabbed Brad Fittler. I said, "Come on, we'll go upstairs and have a beer and grab that kid. I think he's pretty special." And we went and actually sat down with Trent Barrett and spoke to him about it. And Trent, Brad had to talk to him and talked about him being a first grade player at that time. It wasn't the NRL, but and we've sort of had a relationship with him ever since. He came into the obviously the Origin program, and I've known him a long time. Years ago, when I first started at Panthers, we put together a halfback academy, and I used to get former NRL halfbacks to come in and have a talk to them as a bit of a special treat. And Trent Barrett was one of the ones that came in, and clearly right then you could see that he had coaching credentials and coaching ability. His ability to converse, to communicate and articulate what he was saying. And I asked him at that time, I said, do you feel like you want to have a career in coaching? He said, "That's what I'd love to do." So 12 months later, I gave him our under-20s. It was 2 years later, I gave him our under-20s job. So he helped out with the halfback academy up until then. And in that room that night was a very young Nathan Cleary, a very young Jerome Luai, a very young Sean O'Sullivan, who's taken over from Nathan Cleary this week, and a number of other players have benefited from his coaching. I saw him work with an under-20 squad. He went up to be assistant coach to Ivan Cleary in the first grade team, but was lured away by Manly to go and coach first grade over there. A job that I thought was not the right job for him at the time, but as I've said a number of times, there's only so many jobs a year, and young coaches want to coach off, they go and do it. It was an experience for him that was beneficial, but also hard for him as well. He went back to the Panthers and played a key role in that team making their first grand final for a number of years, and working again with the boys that he'd sort of known years prior. And then he took on this job at the Bulldogs, which was a extremely difficult job for him to take on. It was I don't think he realised at the time just how difficult that would be, and it was a tough first year for him, but he's come through it. He's a very resilient chap. And for all those people that comment on coaches and whether they're good or whether they're bad or whether they're doing the right thing or non-thing, I actually get a front row seat to it. I actually watch them operate. I actually see them. I listen to them. I hear them. I speak to them. He's a very, very good coach.
But that's within my question there. What is it that you observe in him that makes you think that this is the bloke that can get this club back on track?
Knowledge, his communication skills, his experience, and his rapport with the players. I mean, that's what we see. Matt, I've any number of times over the years, we'll see clubs that are going to sack coaches or clubs that are going to move coaches on, and I say two things. Number one, I don't think the coach is the issue, the major issue there, and number two, it's hard to find another one. Where are you going to keep getting these first-grade coaches? The thing that beats most coaches, and I've had a number of them over the years that will call at the time where they're facing sort of losing their job, or they've lost their job, or they're looking to get back into to being a coach at any level. And it's not the football that beats them; it's everything around it that beats them. And I've tried to create scenarios where the coach just needs to coach the side. That's all he needs to worry about. And Trent walked into a situation last year where it wasn't a coaching issue. It was a club issue, and the club's acknowledged that because the club's made significant changes over the last 12 months to address the issues that he's had. Remember, the Bulldogs ran 13th, 15th before he got there.
Yeah.
The slide had well and truly, been set in motion. And
So he knew what he was in for.
well, I don't know if he knew what he was in for. I warned him. I said publicly at the time, I remember halfway through 2020, was it, when this was muted, I said if I was Trent, I wouldn't go there. I don't think that's the job he should take on. He should stay at the Panthers. They're going to win a comp, maybe 2 or 3. And, he loves the players out there and they loved him, and he was working with great people. And, sometimes I just don't. But he's always had this determination that he will back himself and do this. And I'm not quite sure he knew what he'd inherited last year, but both he and the new board out there, had worked very, very hard last year. You weren't going to see those results on the field. The results were more off the field in the things that they've been putting in place. And I've been back at the club probably since last July or August, but the team was away at that time. They were up at the Gold Coast doing camp, so I've only really been with them since October. And we've put a lot of things in place at the club that are going to benefit into the future. My job is what the club looks like in 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years' time, and with the people that I'm working with to make sure that the Bulldogs are never in this situation again. It's, he inherited a lot of issues, but they weren't. And even with Dean Pay, like I supported Dean Pay, I didn't think that Dean Pay was the issue with the club at the time and the results that they were getting. And again, remember, 13th, 15th, and then last year. And not only was it last, they finished 8 points behind the second last team. It was a long last. This is a club that's won 6 games in the last 2 years. So there's a lot that needed to be addressed, and it's being addressed, and it will be. In the meantime, what I've tried to do is make sure that Trent Barrett only needs to worry about coaching his team, his squad, and doing that to the best of his ability. And that's for all the coaches. It's a very simple philosophy. Coaches coach, players play, administrators administrate. We don't blur the lines, and that's where it goes. And he's doing a really good job.
Speaking of coaches, of all the brilliant things you've done in rugby league, Gus, turning Willie Mason into a coach might be among the absolute best. You got Willie Mason in there.
I don't think I've turned him into a coach. He might be one of those. What do they call him? The whisperers.
Willie Mason's a coach.
Willie the Whisperer. Whispering Willie, that's what I'll call him now.
How's Big Willie going?
He's going good. Someone rang me and said, "What's Willie doing?" I said, "I don't know, he hasn't told me yet, but he's..."
What's he do?
He makes up his own.
He does the forwards.
He's actually been terrific. He came in and saw me, had a lot of passion for being back involved with the club and helping out. He just wanted to put back into a club that would give him his opportunity, and he'd sat back and watched a lot of football, and I said, well, if you like, you can turn up to the academy. So he started turning up. He didn't have a contract. He wasn't getting paid. He was turning up to the academy programs. He's going back with the under-15s development squad, under-16s, under-18s, and turning up to their training and talking to them, and not just about football, but about life and other things. And he had a couple of blokes that he would put his arm around and have a bit of a talk to. And then he started turning up and around the first grade side, and he wasn't getting paid. And then he did so much of it, and I said, all right, well, now you've proven to me that you're committed and you really want to do it. So without telling him what to do or what his job is, Willie's coming in to be a great support system to the coaching staff, to the players themselves, and it's great to have a player of his experience and his love for the club. It's a touch with a successful part of the club's history. He was a premiership winner with the club. So, having people like that around the players that have experienced the highs and lows of the game and can help out. And Willie's job might be just to take someone for a cup of coffee or to help someone out with an issue that they're having, with a player that's got an injury, is in rehab, who's lost his position in the team, or he might have some advice or whatever. Willie does what Willie wants to do. He's a whisperer.
He's a whisperer.
Willie the Whisperer. He's a player whisperer.
People forget how good a player he was, though. I mean, he's got some knowledge he can pass on.
He was a dynamic player, Willie, and I had the good fortune of coaching him in Origin, Willie, and got to know him at that time, and we've always sort of kept in contact. But it was nice to get calls, and I got calls from many former Bulldog players that I played with, players that I coached, and some of those have found their way into helping out with the club, and a lot of others have put their hand up to help out, whether it be just with recruitment or whatever, working with kids and juniors, or coming in for a session to help out with kicking. And, they're all sort of pitching in, which is really, really good. And that's going to make for the character of the club. And, it's not going to be easy, man. It's a long road. They've got a lot of ground to make up. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step.
Well, you've made some changes already, and you've got a game against North Queensland to start your season on Sunday night, which we'll preview very shortly. I'm introducing a little new element to Six Tackles with Gus. It's called Six Tackle Trivia.
Right.
I'm going to ask you a question every week. Oh, and if you're a vodcaster and you want to send a question through to Gussie for Six Tackle
What
Trivia.
sort of question?
A trivia question. I'm going to try and stump you each week.
Well, that won't be hard.
You're pretty good with this stuff.
Unless you ask me what I did in the last hour, I'm probably not going to remember anything.
No, that's not true. If you want to ask a question in the comments down below here, David Middleton and I are conspiring each week. We're going to try and come up with something that might stump you, but sort of segues into the theme of the week.
Football related? Sport related?
For the moment.
Life related?
I think we might make a Seinfeld appearance at some stage. All right, you ready for your first question of the year?
Do I say I know the answer, or do we come back after the break?
It's called a teaser in the business.
Teaser, okay.
Yeah. Craig Bellamy, as we know, has never lost a round one game as a coach. He's 18 from 18, Gus. Which coach has the next best round one record? Minimum 5 games as a coach. Six Tackles with Gus.
I didn't get a chance to Google that. You've come back too quickly.
You're not allowed. If you do that in a trivia night, you get disqualified.
I don't think it would be on Google anyway.
Right. Craig Bellamy has never lost a round one game as a coach.
That's an incredible record. That's an incredible record. Incredible record, isn't it?
Whose record
when you think about
is next best?
Next best.
As a coach?
Oh, Lord. The bottom line is I don't know. All
right, I'll give you a clue.
No, wait on. I don't want a clue.
Oh, you were going to Google it 30 seconds ago.
I always know that Wayne Bennett's sides were very hard to beat, particularly early in his career and particularly in his early Broncos days. He was exceptional at getting his teams ready for early season. Back in the day, we used to have pre-season competitions, and some clubs were better at getting ready early in the season than others. I don't know the answer, but I knew Wayne Bennett had a very good record very early in his career. I don't know how it's been in recent times because I don't keep up on such trivia. Go on.
I was going to bring the buzzer in, but I forgot. The answer is Ricky Stewart.
Right.
Who has won 14 of 18 first-round games at a strike rate of 77.8. Now, you think about it. He coached Cronulla and Parramatta, and they couldn't get out of their own way. And yet he's still got a record. He's only lost 4 times in round one. Ricky Stewart, one of our favourites here on Six Tackles with Gus.
Very good.
You like that? A little bit of trivia, actually.
Excellent stat.
You look like you're totally over the moon with this new inclusion. NRLW. We've had 2 triple headers the last 2 Sundays. You went down and called that game in the absolute pouring rain last week. It has rated so well, and it's so popular.
It bucketed down there. I mean, there was actually water laying on the ground. You don't see that very often these days. But after the game, I had to drive home, and I live in the Sutherland Shire, and driving up Mount Ousley, you come out of Wollongong and driving up Mount Ousley, we were at 30 kilometres an hour with our hazard lights on, all the way up Mount Ousley and all the way along the expressway. By the time I got to Engadine, the roads were dry.
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre. I've left Belmore Oval going home, and it takes me 20 minutes to get home. I've left Belmore Oval where it's dry, gone through a monsoon as I go through Beverly Hills and Hurstville, and it's fine by the time I get to Sylvania. It's ridiculous.
I know.
And it just keeps coming. Enough already. We've had enough rain.
We have had enough rain. Footy's been good, though, NRLW. Broncos 2 from 2. Gee, I tell you, I reckon the Titans are the team that's going to challenge them. I called that game on Sunday. Salter did the other 2. The Titans over the Roosters, gee, they're a good side.
Big, strong, athletic girls, aren't they? Oh. And it's the comment I've made after watching these 2 rounds, and I had the good fortune of calling the first year of NRLW and the early origins and those sorts of things, and saw the girls coming in. But as the years have gone by and they've got into, more opportunity to train, more opportunity to prepare together, more opportunity to get proper coaching and everything like that, these girls are improving remarkably. And I made a statement on social media the other night that I can't imagine another women's sport, female sport anywhere in the world that is as tough and as demanding and gets such 100% physical commitment. All athletes in all sports give 100% when you get to this level, but what these girls actually do to themselves and the physicality of what they do is extraordinary. And they're all getting fitter, they're all getting stronger, they're all becoming more skillful, and the quality of football compared now to what it was, even 3 to 5 years ago is extraordinary, and it's unbelievable where it might land. Female participation is the fastest growing part of our game, obviously, because we didn't have it for a lot of years, or we didn't provide that sort of opportunity. But clubs now have all got female teams, junior leagues have got female competitions, and it's only going to blossom and come through. And the girls this year are extraordinary. Their skill level, their athleticism, their speed, their endurance, their tackle technique, so much is improving about their game, and it's quality stuff.
It is indeed. This week, Saturday, Roosters Knights, both of those teams looking for their first wins of the NRLW comp. Dragons versus Broncos, the two unbeaten teams facing off. That's on Sunday. And then we've got Parramatta versus the Titans, which will be a good game. Both of those teams have had one win each, so you'll see all of them on 9 as part of round 3.
Yeah, so at the Bulldogs, most teams got a Tasha Gale Cup team. It's a sort of like an under-19s girls team. It's a development squad. Next year, I think we'll be looking to go into the Harvey Norman women's competition, which is open age, so it'll give them a pathway into that.
Right.
And then the question becomes about an NRLW team down the track, and I think eventually we'll see this competition keep getting bigger and stronger. We've got to build up the numbers of players that can play at that level, but a lot of young kids, a lot of young girls going around in that competition last week. We've obviously got our experienced ones that have been doing it for a few years, but and a lot of them with touch football and OzTag backgrounds, learning the skills when they're younger. And it shows that all those girls that are playing the recreational form of the game and competing in touch football and OzTag, and they love it, they're two very big sports, can graduate through to the tackle version of the game at any time and play at the highest level. And I keep trying to make that point that, you don't have to start in the tackle game to graduate towards the tackle game later in your teenage years.
All right, let's preview round 1 of NRL season 2022, starting with the reigning premiers Penrith hosting the Manly Seagulls at Penrith, and it'll be a big night because it's the first time they've been back there since they won the grand final in Brisbane, of course. We know the news came out yesterday. Nathan Cleary will miss the first 3 weeks of the season. Sean O'Sullivan, who was a Penrith junior, wasn't he, Gus?
He played with Glenmore Park. Yes, he was. He played in all our junior rep teams, and Sean was an Australian schoolboy halfback. Came through the system there. He won an SG Ball under-18s competition. They were national title holders that year. He was a year younger than Nathan and Jerome, but they were all in the same academy program. They used to play together and work together. So I think I saw Jerome Luai say the other night that he's known Sean since he was 13 or 14, and that would be correct. And they would have done a lot of training, a lot of playing together back in the day. Sean saw that his pathway was going to be blocked through to the NRL with Nathan and Jerome, and he went to the Roosters. His dad, Peter O'Sullivan, who was the talent scout for the Roosters at the time, he obviously went down to the Roosters. He made his debut there, went off to play with the Broncos, played first grade for the Broncos. He ended up at the Warriors. We had him at the Warriors last year, and he had a good season, and it was a smart buy to get him back to the Panthers to cover for Nathan Cleary and Jerome, and particularly when now they're the Origin halves, they've got to have depth in those positions for those games during the year where they might miss or they want to rest players. And Sean will know the system really, really well, and he'll have had plenty of experience playing with Jerome in the halves.
Well, he's taken the scenic route, but he gets a crack in first grade for Penrith next to Jerome Luai. Isaac Togo's in the centres. Charlie Stones is on the wing. Liam Martin starts to cover for Kurt Capel, who's gone to the Broncos. Now, for Manly, Otakar Watu has been named and will likely play. Suffered an elbow injury against the Raiders in the trials, and they were expecting to miss the opening weeks of the season, but he will take the field. Josh Schuster, his normal second-row partner, is out with an ankle injury, and Tolatau Kula, who I haven't seen before, young gun outside back who can motor, has been named on the bench for Manly to make his debut. In the wet, no Nathan Cleary. Turbo, playing fullback for Manly. What do you reckon?
Well, firstly, what are the conditions going to be? I mean, we're going to be playing in the pouring rain, and what will the?
They're saying it's going to be. It won't be raining, but you've all seen the vision of how much Penrith got whacked in the last few weeks. So
yeah,
it'll be damp at best.
Yeah. Look, it's a great way to start the season. Two quality teams, great attacking sides, and I'd imagine if we can get any semblance of a dry track, hopefully we see a fast, open game of rugby league. Panthers, obviously the defending premiers, and they will carry that tag right through the season, and everyone will be there seeing them as a benchmark and someone that they need to beat. And Des Hasler and his troops, with the season that they put in last year, are probably taking on that challenge and thinking they can go there and get a big scalp on the first night. Across the board, we know that both sides have got tremendous talent. They've played at the top end. They've played in big games. This Manly side is still developing. What they did last year was extraordinary. They fell short at the back end of the year. And for me, the teams that they didn't beat were the top three sides. They didn't beat the Panthers or the Storm or the Rabbitohs, but they pretty much beat everybody else on their way through to a top four finish. They'll see this as a huge challenge to correct that straight away, particularly without Nathan Cleary playing. Look, I'm going to go with the home side because I think there'll be tremendous emotion. They haven't been at home last year since they played very few games at home last year before they all went into lockdown. And as defending premiers coming back to their fans and in front of their home fans, I can just imagine how exciting that'll be for them, and they'll want to put on a good performance. And who'll win, I don't know, but I'll favour the home team just because they're the Panthers. But Manly will be very, very hard to beat. And I know Des Hasler, I know his competitive nature, and I know the competitive nature of a number of these Manly players. They'll see this as a real chance to do something they didn't do last year, which was to beat one of these top three sides. And a win away from home against the Panthers is not something any other team's going to do this year. So if you win this, you immediately get a 2-point jump on the field. It's like birdieing the hardest par 4 on the course. You get a stroke on the field, don't you, Matt?
Must be a good feeling.
Yeah, so if they can beat the Panthers at Penrith, that's birdieing the hardest par 4 on the course.
I tipped Penrith by a point in the World of Sports tipping comp.
It's very brave of you, Matthew.
1 point. I'm calling that, and I cannot wait. I'm pumped. What a great way to start the season.
Yep.
Raiders versus Sharks, early game on Friday. Now, Jared Croker is coming back through the reserves. Ricky, who is the second best coach ever in opening round fixtures. He's also named Matt Tomoko and James Schiller, who's a debutant in the centres. Now, we did our season preview last week, and we were saying that great signing Jamal Fogarty. The poor kid's out for 4 months.
Yeah, terrible news, isn't it? Terrible news.
Brad Schneider gets a crack at halfback for the Raiders. This new look Sharks team will be captained by Dale Finucane, who plays his first game for Cronulla as captain. Wade Graham's injured. They've lost Connor Tracy to Mulatalo at centre, Ikavalu on the wing. Another good game of footy.
It is, and the two coaches know each other well. Ricky coached Craig Fitzgibbon for a large part of his career there at the Roosters, and Craig, this is his debut as an NRL coach. I was very impressed with the Sharks in their second trial against the Bulldogs. They showed a remarkable amount of cohesion for a team with so many new faces in it. I thought Nico Hines really brought something to the team. Matt Moylan hasn't trained, but he's been given the number 6 jersey for this game, which we sort of predicted last week.
Trindle suspended, by the way. Yep.
So, look, I think just on the score that the Raiders are missing their halfback, and you've rocked me a little bit with the Ricky Stewart round 1 sort of thing, but I was sort of fancying the Sharks might be able to go down there and get this done.
Now I've mentioned we've mocked him, he's going to lose.
Yeah, well, I might go with that too. Well, I think the Sharks are in for a very good season. I think these two teams will finish alongside each other by the end of the year. There's not much between them. Very hard to predict who's going to win this. Again, you'll normally go with the home side, but the fact that the halfback isn't there and they're debuting a fella in the centres who is probably going to be up against Jesse Ramian or Mulatalo, who are pretty experienced themselves. Just could be the tipping point. A couple of these Raiders haven't played as yet. I'm going to back Craig Fitzgibbon to open his coaching career with a win on the road against the Raiders. They're
a smart-looking outfit, even without a few players who are injured. Friday night footy here on 9 from Suncorp. Broncos versus Rabbitohs. 8:05 kickoff. Daylight saving time, 7:05 local Queensland time. I can tell you Adam Reynolds isn't there. So Billy Walters gets to wear the Brisbane number 6 jumper, which his father did with distinction for many, many years. Albert Kelly will fill in the halves. Tessie News not there either, Gus. Jermaine Asako has been named at fullback. Thought they might have given Selwyn Cobbo a crack there, but they've gone with Jermaine Asako. Look, they've got a few out Brisbane, to be honest. Tyrone Roberts gets a run on the bench. And for South Sydney, no Latrell Mitchell. He'll be back next week, so Blake Taft's at the back. We know Lachlan Ilias is playing at halfback, and the rest of them are pretty settled. Cam Murray will be there and captain South Sydney. He had the same shoulder procedure, actually, as Nathan Cleary, but he's come up okay for round one. A new era maybe for the Broncos, but without Adam Reynolds, it looks to be a tough assignment.
Well, Adam Reynolds was the buy. That's the one we spoke about last week. They've been looking for a playmaker. They've been looking for a game manager. They've been looking for a leader. They've been looking for a general play kicker, and that's what he was to provide. And unfortunately, he's not there for round one, so it's very hard to judge the Broncos or predict anything different to what we've seen until he actually slips into that role and gets a few weeks with them or even a few months with them. So, they might be spinning their wheels until he returns. Hopefully it's not the week after and he's not missing too much football. But just on the score of the number of times the players have played together, South Sydney have got it over the Broncos at this stage. And despite the fact they too are missing Adam Reynolds.
Yeah, they are.
They've still got Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell's not there. But Damien Cook, I just think with their forward pack and South Sydney, last year was certainly one of the top three sides. Cameron Murray, I don't think it's trialled, but he's back into this side. I think South Sydney might be a little bit too strong for them, but very keen to have a look at the development of the Broncos once Adam Reynolds gets back in that number 7 jersey.
Latrell and Jacob Host had a dust-up at training yesterday.
Everyone has a dust-up at training, mate. It's not big news.
No, I didn't think so.
You
3 p.m.
The media's not around for all that all the time. Every now and then they catch it. They think it's something new.
Well, they're playing footy. What do you expect they're going to do?
Of course they are.
3 p.m. on Saturday at the SCG, the Roosters up against the Newcastle Knights. Now, this is the first time ever that Sam Walker and Luke Keary will play together in the halves in the NRL.
Wow.
And I had another stat which I stupidly left on my desk, but Radley and Keary haven't played together in the same team for... I don't think they played at all last year. So I think we're going back to 2020. Gee, it's a good-looking team with everyone fit. Billy Smith's in the centres. Joey Manu's back in the centres as well. He's played in the trial games, obviously. They get Momirovski back, who played lower grades at the Roosters. Connor Watson will wear the number 9 with Sam Verrills out. And for Newcastle, Kalen Ponga captains the team, which includes Clifford and Clune in the halves.
Yeah, look, I think this is a little bit of a mismatch. Only early season rustiness will hold the Roosters back to the field in this game. I think that they're just too strong right across the park. Keary and Tedesco did not trial, so we can ignore the trial form for the Roosters. Just a cheerio to Billy Smith and hope he does really well. The poor kid's had so many injuries. Yeah. I'd love to see him have an injury-free season and establish himself in the top grade.
It's a great vote of confidence, isn't it, from the coach, throwing him straight in?
Absolutely, and he's a talent too. Lindsay Collins comes back into the team as well. I thought Connor Watson was an interesting purchase during the off-season. And look, I think they're too strong right across the park. I think the Knights are going to miss Mitchell Pearce. When that's all due respect to Clifford and Clune, who will get better the more time that they can play together and develop as a side. But it's hard to see the Knights matching the Roosters if the Roosters can play anywhere near their top form. It's round one. We don't know what the conditions are going to be like, but on the score of just looking at combinations and experience, and I think that the Roosters will be too strong.
5:30, Sunshine Coast Stadium, Warriors, Dragons. Another tight contest, on paper anyway. Now, Chanel Harris-Tavita's been named at fullback, Gus, with no Reece Walsh. I want you to tell me about this kid, Viliami Vallejo. I think you gave him a good rap to me at the start of last year. He's in the centres with Rocco Berry, and he's kept Adam Pompey out of the starting lineup.
Yeah, he's a real talent. I think he only played a couple in first grade last year, and it might have been after I'd sort of left the Warriors, but I saw plenty of him during the off-season, and he played a number of games in the Queensland Cup last year. I think he was averaging just over a try a game in the games that I watched. Very raw talent, but extremely skillful, fast, got a really good fend, dangerous player, defends really well, reads it very well for a young kid. He and Rocco Berry, just from what I saw in the off-season I spent with, were certainly going to be the future of their centre combinations down the track. And it's great to see that Nathan Brown's shown the confidence to put them in there and have a look. Reece Walsh not playing, obviously, is he's probably been their major attacking creative weapon from the time he came to the club. But for me, it will be Sean Johnson coming back to the club to play in the number 7 jersey. I'm delighted that Cody Nikorima is still in the side playing at number 6, because I've always rated Cody as a really good young player. And the fullback, Chanel Harris-Tavita, himself a real talent, who I think is still developing and learning the game. He'll make a fist of that at fullback, filling in for Reece Walsh. I really like the look of this Warriors side. I think they're a top 8 contender during the course of the season. The forward pack's extremely strong. But then on the other hand, we've got this Dragons side, who I think have been very underestimated in pre-season markets and pre-season discussions. They've got some kids here. I think I spoke to you last week. We looked at an Illawarra under-18s team a couple of years ago and saw these young fellas coming through, and you can immediately see they're going to be NRL players of the future. And they're all sort of getting through now and filtering through to that top grade. Their trial form has been good. They won the Charity Shield, which is more than a trial game for those sides. Very interesting forward battle here. Look, I'm going to tip the Warriors. I just think to me, this is as close as they can get, other than Reece Walsh, to their best side. It's life without Reece Walsh, and it's life without Tuivasa-Sheck, which they spent half the season doing last year. But look, again, nothing between them.
Yeah.
Nothing between them.
Good game.
But I just like the look of this Warriors team. I'd like to see them get off to a good start and have a lot better luck with injury.
Just quickly too, a lot of attention focusing on Tarek Sims not being named here. Like, he has never been named in the extended squad. If Tarek Sims is fit to play with that ankle problem, surely he's at least in the squad. He can't be fit.
Well, I don't know what sort of off-season he's had. I don't know. Coaches know best. Look, the funny thing about coaches, mate, they like winning.
Of course they do.
So they pick the best possible team to try and win that week.
But it's been made out that it's a snub for the bloke. Like, if Tarek Sims is an origin forward, of course he's going to be in the squad somewhere if he's fit.
And just because they're not in the 17 this week is not a snub. The people have got to get away from that. And I know that's a lot of fan and media comment, and why is this player not in and why is he not? Well, maybe the best thing for him at the moment is a full game back in the lower grade, just to get, to finish off his preparation for the season. Or there are things that, so I'm sure Tarek Sims is very much a part of the Dragons' plans for this season. But right this week, it's just considered best that he gets himself a full game in the other game and goes from there. So I don't question those types of things at all, particularly early in the season. And you've got to get them all football. Just flicking through again, gee whiz, they've got some depth here, the Warriors. Some of these young fellas have got an opportunity last year, and they're going to be a top 8 side. And I think the Dragons are going to go a hell of a lot better than what people were predicting earlier in the year. Really like Terrell Sloan. I think this young Amon is a terrific young player. He's going to give them some creativity that that have been lacking. Very close one. I'm just going to favour the Warriors in this one.
7:30, Combank Stadium. West Tigers hosting the Melbourne Storm. I guess most interest here on Jackson Hastings in his first NRL hit out for the West Tigers. The Peaches there. He's on the bench, though. Off Hangawi starting at lock. They've got no Harry Grant, but Brandon Smith starts in the 9. And Nick Meaney's going to play 5/8 because Cameron Munster's out. Do you expect Craig Bellamy will go 19 from 19? Hard to see him not winning that.
Well, I won't be tipping against him, put it that way. It's a tough start for the Tigers, but it's, sometimes I think it's best to play the best team in the competition in round one. I think it's good to get that one out of the way, and if you can win it, it's a huge bonus.
I did beat him by 60 last year.
Yeah, but, it's a new season, and, the new season, the Melbourne Storm, there's been some little changes, but as I look through it, there aren't too many weaknesses there, are there? And I would expect that the Melbourne Storm system and the way that they perform early in the season will hold them in good stead. Cheering for the Tigers, but I'd have to tip the Storm.
Xavier Coates will score 3 tries in that. You heard it here first. Eels versus Titans. Sunday afternoon footy here on 9. Good game of footy. Para, who Gus is tipping to be a real contender to win the flag this year, up against the Titans, who snuck into the 8 and on paper look a very formidable outfit. So much so, Gus, that they've left Jared Wallace, an origin forward, out of their 17-man squad. And by the way, just on that, Parramatta have left Nathan Brown and Bryce Cartwright out of their 17.
Shows how strong they are, isn't
Yeah.
it? Shows how strong they are, and it's a really strong-looking team right across the board. And I'm going down into their depth. I mean, even into the reserves from 19 through to 28. I mean, crikey, it's they've got plenty of depth there too. Titans, they've been building up over the last few years, and I'll be looking forward to an improved season. They made the 8 last year, and I think they're going back to the 8 this year, I reckon. But Parramatta, for the time spent playing together, I think at home for the first game should be a little too strong for them. But again, it's a good opportunity for the Titans to start off the year with a bang, beating a team like Parramatta on their home ground in the first week. That's what I'd be saying to them. This is a game that not many are going to win. You get a jump on the field if you can do it. And if Parramatta are a little bit off, then the Titans have got the ability to score points and make it very, very interesting for them. But I'll go with the combination of Clint Gutherson, Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses, and Reid Marnie. That quartet of playmakers. The fact that they play so much football together and they're so good, I think that will serve Parramatta very, very well in this game. While the other boys are still finding their feet with combination.
Titans will throw some points at them, though. And to round out the opening round of season 2022, the Canterbury Bulldogs are favourites to go to Townsville and beat the Cowboys. I'm not going to go through all the changes for Canterbury because it is a new era for the club with Josh Addo-Carr and Burton and Naden and Vaughan and Pangai Jr. and Matt Duffy and Braden Burns and anyone else that was off contract that Gus could sign. Jason Taumalolo, though, he'll lead the Cowboys from lock. They've left Scott Drinkwater out of there. 17.
They've got a lot of halves up there. A lot of halves. I was watching their trial form. Tommy Dearden's built up. He's very, very strong, defended really well in his position there. Chad Townsend was one of their major off-season buys. The Hammer's back at fullback, and we know what he's capable of exceptionally. It's pretty tough for the Sydney teams at the moment. If you think about the last couple of weeks with the rain, it's just getting quality training sessions in. It's very, very hard to train, and for the Bulldogs, with all the rain that's around and the conditions that they're training in, trying to prepare to go up to the tropics at this time of year and play on that surface up there in that type of conditions. It's a real challenge for the Bulldogs, but they're prepared to take it on. They're going up on Friday. They'll have their captain's run on Saturday. It's you need to spend a lot longer there to acclimatise to it, but the challenges of preparing under difficulty here are exactly the same as the challenges of playing under difficulty up there. So
they've got a dry track there, I reckon.
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. Saw some nice photos of the Cowboys training in a sunny camp on a beach somewhere and enjoying life up there in the tropics. Bulldogs are down here slopping around in the mud and
losing their boots.
Yeah, getting their boots sucked off them in the muds. They sucked me boot off. I had to go back and find it. Then you ever tried to untie the laces of when your boots are muddy and wet? And you've tied them up tight so that they won't come off, but they did anyway. So you're standing there in the middle of the field and everyone's screaming, "Get back in the line, get back in the line." You've only got one sock on and one shoe, and you're trying to undo your laces. So you're screaming at the trainer to bring the scissors out so he can cut your laces, and then the laces don't match, so you've got to pull a few out of the loops, which only makes them all loose the next time. It's a nightmare, isn't it?
And then when you dig it out...
I still have nightmares about it. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
And then when you dig
Not
it out...
to get your boot back on.
When you dig it out...
And then we score a try and you've got to kick the goal, but you've got no boot on.
And then
These things don't torment you, do you?
Well, I've never experienced it, Gus.
Yeah.
But you dig it out and then some bloke from the other team gets it and throws it in the row 30 of the grandstand.
I have a dream where I'm about to play golf, I'm about to tee off, and every time I go and put the tee in the ground and put the ball on it, the ball will fall off.
Oh.
And then eventually I'll get the ball back on it, and then I go to take a practice swing and there's a wall behind me.
Oh.
So now I've got to move the ball, but then I'm going to be in front of the markers. So I'm trying to move it to where there's not... These are weird dreams, aren't they?
Interpretation on that.
I need to be on a couch somewhere, don't I?
Well, we need to get that interpreted.
Yeah. Well,
I get one about back in my cricket days where I'm into bat, but I can't find my gear. That's the worst.
Yeah.
You can't find your pads or your bat, and you think, oh, I'm about to get timed out. Then you wake up just as you're about to get timed out.
Yeah. I have dreams where I'm about to kick a goal and the ball turns into a pillow. I mean, how far can you kick a pillow? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Or I can't get the ball to stay on the mound.
It turns into a pillow.
I have dreams where I'm going to do my HXC exams and I haven't studied. I've lost all my
I get that one too.
Yeah.
I always get that one. What does that mean?
What's it mean?
I don't know.
What's it mean?
Isn't it funny how you have dreams that you're back at school?
But then, but now I've got to the age where I know what it is, so I can actually say to myself in the dream, "Idiot, it's a dream. Wake up."
Wow.
And once I'm awake, and then I don't go back to sleep. Yeah, you don't want to be in my dreams, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in my dreams.
I don't want to be in your bed.
You know what I talk about in commentary, where someone's trying to reach for the ball and they keep tripping over and falling up? I get that dream.
Yeah. Are you trying to run away from someone who's after you with a knife? Do you get that one?
No.
Well, you've probably had a few blokes come after you with a knife in your rugby league career, I would have thought. Bulldogs to win that one. All right. Do you want to go through your tips? Have you got them all there?
No.
There you go.
Yeah, wait, I'll go through it for you. Okay, so I'm tipping Panther, Shark, Rabbit, Rooster, Warrior, Storm, Eel, Bulldog.
Very good. What games are you doing this weekend? Sunday?
None.
What?
None.
Oh.
I asked for the weekend off because I've got a couple of things to do up in North Queensland and I wanted to be there for the Bulldogs' first game, support the team, so I'm going up to Townsville. You're doing all the work this week.
Fair enough.
My job's to sit here and do a podcast with you. A podcast, apparently.
Yeah, podcast. G'day, everyone. We've gone a bit long, but you'll indulge us. It is round one. Remember, 6 tackle trivia. If you want to submit a question for Gus.
Ricky Stewart.
Down the
What was
bottom.
it?
Ricky Stewart.
14 from 18 or
14
something?
from 18, yeah.
Wow.
That's 6 tackles with Gus for round 1, 2022. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the footy. Can't wait for Penrith versus Manly tomorrow night. We'll chat next week.